Second leg of the Triple Crown, the Preakness, always seems to come upon us pretty quickly. Best way to play the Preakness this Saturday at Pimlico down in Baltimore is play through NYRA Bets. Head on over to nyrabets.com. If you're not a member, sign up, use the promo code MATCH200. We will match up to $200 of your initial deposit. Play through NYRA Bets, support racing in New York. Medina Spirit. I haven't really heard much about him since the Kentucky Derby. There's been a lot of silence around him. Well, he's back trying for the Triple Crown. In theory, I guess that is, and we'll take a look at Medina Spirit winning the Kentucky Derby, and the 6th and 7th place finishers are really the only ones coming back, and we'll talk about them in a bit. Medina Spirit's an extremely game horse, and on the front end, he's a very tough horse to pass. He's never won a race when he had to rate, and I think that may be a situation he may have to deal with in here. He's a very game horse, he's a consistent horse, and a terrific horse, and arguably on paper the horse to beat. But for me, he's a last time was the time horse. We got the money in the Kentucky Derby, and I have a feeling that he may not be the absolute speed in this race. Discuss more on that later. I want to talk, though, about some horses that finish behind him, starting with Midnight Bourbon. Now, we'll take a look at the good Midnight Bourbon when Midnight Bourbon's finished second in the Louisiana Derby behind Hot Rod Charlie, who was a reasonably good third in the Kentucky Derby. Midnight Bourbon ran his consistent good race, and a race that could make him a player in this race, especially if you're not thrilled with Medina Spirit or the other Bob Baffert runner, Concert Tour, neither of whom do a lot for me. Midnight Bourbon did not run particularly well last time, but he didn't run that badly. He lost some ground, which may or may not have been an issue for him, but mostly he didn't break with his usual sort of speed out of the gate, and Mike Smith tried to motivate him. The 12 horse came over, and very quickly he got a little bit shuffled out of the race, and Mike decided to rate him when he realized he was probably in an untenable situation. And Midnight Bourbon ended up farther back than is definitely in his comfort zone. He didn't run badly after that, but in a race that was essentially a merry-go-round race, he was out of position early and not able to overcome it. No big surprise, and he's a major player in here, and for a lot of us, one of the horses you want to use in the Preakness. Keep Me in Mind also ran the Kentucky Derby. He did not lose much ground. In fact, he lost only 20 feet, according to Trackist, the 7th shortest trip to the wire of all the contestants in the Kentucky Derby. David Cohn did a great job of saving ground. He angled out very, very late in the turn, so he's wide in the stretch, but he didn't lose much ground in the turn. It was tough to make up ground in the Derby, so perhaps that's a feather in his cap. I've never been a big fan of this horse, but if you think the Preakness is going to fall apart, maybe he's on your tickets. He's just not on mine. Let's talk about the other Bob Baffert runner, and that's Concert Tour, the 10. A lot of people think Concert Tour is the right horse and that Bob Baffert will win the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown, just not with the same horse. And maybe that'll be the case. I actually kind of like him more than Medina Spirit because I think he's the one that's going to lead in this race. Perhaps I'll be wrong, but I think Concert Tour will find himself in front. We'll see how much pressure he gets from Medina Spirit and also Midnight Bourbon, who may be very forward in here, and perhaps somebody else will be aggressive. My problem with Concert Tour is the distance. He got worse in the Arkansas Derby now. Yeah, he had to deal with Caddo River, and the pace was pretty quick, but he couldn't finish up in a 1 1/8. Why is he supposed to do it a 1 3/16? He's never run a particularly fast figure, and for a horse that's going to be a reasonably short price, he just doesn't do a lot for me. I won't be shocked if he runs well in here, and of the 2 Baffert runners, I do prefer Concert Tour, but I'm going to go elsewhere, and that elsewhere is Crowded Trade. He's one of the 2 horses I mainly like in this race. We'll take a look at his Wood Memorial. Now, there is a fair argument that the Wood Memorial came up a bit of a slow race, but Crowded Trade had run a fast figure in his prior race, the Gotham, to suggest that he can run a faster race. The concern with Crowded Trade is distance. Is he necessarily a horse that really is more of a 7/8 to a mile horse, and is he not able to put in his finishing kick beyond a mile? He hung a little bit at the end of the Gotham, but he did have a bit of a trip that day. He didn't break that sharply, made a wide run, and the winner had a more comfortable spot, so he probably ran the best race. And an interesting point about this Wood Memorial, it's not as though he was falling backwards. He sort of idled. Now, it's a concern, no question about it. But I don't think he ran like a horse that was going backwards as they went a longer distance. And given his price and the circumstance, he does have the exact same PPs as Cloud Computing had coming this Preakness. Now, I would say Cloud Computing had trips in those races that Crowded Trade didn't have. But I think Crowded Trade is an interesting horse. He picks up Javier Castellano, who rode Cloud Computing. I think it's a rider upgrade. And I think Cloud Computing at the price, Crowded Trade at the price, is a horse that may be worth using very strongly in this Preakness. The other runner from Chad Brown, Risk Taking, did not run well at all in the Wood Memorial we just looked at. But 2 races back in the Withers, he stamped himself as a legitimate Triple Crown contender. Big win in this race. Now, he didn't beat a lot. Overtook, who finished second. Really didn't do much running in the Peter Pan here last week. But I would say that Risk Taking is the one that sort of seized control of this race, and the others were just kind of also rans. Risk Taking did not run well in the Wood, but it was such an uncharacteristically bad performance that it is reasonable to suggest that something went wrong, whether it was the heavy track, the conditions, and he's worth giving another chance. And Chad Brown wouldn't be running him in this race. He would have run him in the Peter Pan if he really didn't think he had a chance to step forward. He's been training very well with Crowded Trade, and perhaps he can take a step forward here. And also, he's not that slow. He's not a plotter. He doesn't have to be that far back, so he could find some middle position in here and perhaps be competitive. Rombauer has his fans. None of them are sitting up here, but Rombauer, who was third in the Bluegrass last time, we'll talk about that in a second, he did win the El Camino Real Derby on synthetic. He has never won a race on the dirt. Now, we'll go back to Golden Gate and take a look at his win, and it was a nice win. He didn't really beat very much, and he didn't run particularly fast. And if you look at his Bluegrass, the next start, well, he just sat on top of a moderate pace, and yeah, it was a moderate pace involving two good horses in essential quality and highly motivated, but he didn't gain any ground on them. In fact, he went backwards. I'm not exactly sure what about his races suggest that he's supposed to be effective here. Yeah, if the pace came apart a bit, he could close like he did against Get Her Number, who's done absolutely nothing in some tough spots since the American Pharaoh. And the reality of Rombauer is, to me, he just doesn't have the races that make him competitive. And I think if a horse with a similar running style is effective in here, it will likely be somebody else. And finally, there's Todd Fletcher's entrant, Unbridled Honor. Unbridled Honor finished second to Lexington last time. Like a number of horses in this race, he took advantage of a wicked pace. He got a terrific ride by Julien Leparoux. He saved ground the rail. He spent most of the second turn the rail before angling out late. And all he did was pick up second behind a supersonic pace that was collapsing. Not really sure how strong this race was overall. He also moved up perhaps in the slop, and none of his other races put him even within hailing distance. I don't think he's a contender in this race. Perhaps some will think he moved forward last time. I think race dynamics got him there. The other long shots, Ram and the horse from Japan, Francisco Ina, appear to be overmatched to me. I don't believe we'll have a Triple Crown chance in the Belmont Stakes. Bob Baffert's Medina Spirit, to me, is a horse you may want to play against in this race. I'm going to try to get a little bit of a price with the number 4 Crowded Trade, use a very logical Midnight Bourbon for second, have the number 10 Concert Tour for third, and risk-taking for fourth. It's an interesting Preakness, and I think an opportunity to get some prices in a race where the favorites could be very vulnerable. Best way to get those prices and play the race? NYRA Bets. Head on over to NYRABets.com. Use the promo code MATCH200. Sign up. We'll match them to $200 your initial deposit. Play the Preakness, play all the races, and enjoy Saturday's Preakness Stakes.